So guys, we're going to take a moment and just talk about tax lien foreclosures redemptions by the owner or the borrower who was foreclosed upon. So guys, if you find this video helpful, take a minute and like us. If you got any comments, take a minute and comment below. And take a minute and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Guys, oftentimes as investors, we're talking to a seller because we found that property because the house was listed for foreclosure. And oftentimes that might be some type of a tax lien foreclosure where property taxes are delinquent. The county could be foreclosing on the property. Maybe someone borrowed money from a private tax company and hasn't made their payments and they're foreclosing on the property. I've dealt with lots of different situations in those scenarios where obviously you can go to contract with the seller to buy the property. You can pay the taxes, whether it's to the law firm handling the foreclosure, the county, or the private company, whatever it might be, to stop that, and then of course move towards closing. And that can be done at closing through traditional payoffs. Pretty easy, pretty standard stuff in that scenario. And that doesn't create the problem. But what if you find that property in that seller and maybe last month, 2 months ago, the property was actually foreclosed on by the taxing authority or taxing company? Well, most sellers have a right of redemption. Here in the Texas marketplace, that right of redemption is 6 months from the time of foreclosure on a non-owner occupied property and 2 years on an owner-occupied property. Now, if you are the investor who bought that at the foreclosure auction, you're not going to be able to sell that property until those redemption periods have run. You're not going to want to improve the property very much. You can certainly maintain it and take care of it and protect it. Heck, you can even lease out the property during that time frame and get income generated on it. As the owner, if it's occupied, you can evict a prior tenant. Even the owner who was foreclosed upon can be evicted as well, even though they still have a redemption right, because they have to redeem it first in order to regain the ownership of the property. But a lot of investors like to go there and work with the seller or the person who was foreclosed upon, the prior owner, in redeeming it so they can then buy the property from that seller and work with them in that regard. So this begins a process because I think different states are going to have different fees to be paid to the person who bought the property at the auction. Here in Texas, with the 6-month redemption period, it's going to be a 25% fee over and above the purchase price. So if the property was sold for $100,000, the redemption price is going to be $125,000. If it is an owner-occupied property and you redeem after 12 months has gone by, it's going to be a 50% redemption fee or $150,000. So obviously it's more wise to redeem sooner than later. Next along the way, you've got to reach out to that investor who bought that home at the auction and get them to provide a redemption deed. They might provide that. You can have your local attorney provide that for you as well, and let the attorney hold that deed in escrow along with the funds so that when they receive the deed, they can exchange money for the deed at that time. Now, along the way, if you're trying to buy the property from the seller who is redeeming, the redemption deed is going to go back to the seller. So before you reach out, pay somebody on this, you want to make certain that you have a contract for sale with that seller, subject to them obtaining title to the property again. You'd want to handle all this simultaneously through your attorney or your title company and make sure everybody is protected. So at closing, there's a redemption deed delivered to the title company. They're authorized not to record that until it is paid. The seller then sells to you as the investor, and you pay the cash that pays the auction investor first. Any money goes to the seller second, and then you get the ownership of the property. But what you have to think about as that investor is this. When the title is going back to the seller, anything that was existing on that property prior to the tax foreclosure will reattach child support liens, judgment liens, IRS liens, mortgage liens, whatever it might be. And so you want to know what is out there. So make sure you've done your homework or a title name search on that seller or sellers or heirs, so you know what is going to affect the property at that time. I've done a tax lien foreclosure of this nature where we redeemed it, where a IRS lien reattached. And so as the seller redeemed and we were able to buy that property, not only did we have to pay the investor their funds, the seller had to pay that IRS lien in order to clear out title. Now, of course, in that case, the IRS lien was still a valid lien and we needed to get it paid and move on. Keep in mind also, as you're talking to these sellers who have been foreclosed on, so often they do not even realize that there may be funds sitting in the court registry that is their money there for the taking. For instance, someone buys a home for $100,000 at a tax lien foreclosure, and maybe the property taxes due and owing were $30,000 after all expenses. Well, the balance of that $70,000 goes back to the court where the judgment was rendered, granting the right to foreclose. And the seller can go and regain those funds. There are various companies, I know here around Texas, I'm sure in other states, who make that a business model of finding out these kind of things and then working with the seller, maybe buying the rights to those funds from the seller as per statute in order to regain them. And it can be a profitable scenario when you understand what the statutes say and how to do those things correctly. But you can't just go willy-nilly, more or less to say, into these. You've got to know how things work. Oftentimes investors think because it was already foreclosed on by the taxing authority that all the liens are wiped out. Remember, they're not. As soon as that title goes back to the seller, all those liens that were extinguished are going to get reapplied to that property, and now you've got to contend with those and deal with them along the way. But done right, navigated right, this can be an awesome mechanism for buying property, buying land, buying commercial, residential property. It's going to work the same across the board out there. Just know what the rules and regulations are in your state, how they work, and then go out there and start buying properties that have been foreclosed on and helping the seller redeem along the way. So guys, I hope you found this little short video helpful for you about tax lien redemptions. If you liked it, take a minute and like it. If you got any comments, take a minute and comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you guys next time.